Welcome back, baseball fans, to the fourth installment of the offseason for the 1981-84 Fall League. We'll probably leave you off here before we take our hiatus and the draft. Give you draft results when they come out in the fall and the league commences. But we have the last final report in from the league. We're going to look at the last 8 teams making moves. That's the Yankees, Cleveland, the Portland, Cincinnati, Oakland, Houston, Philadelphia, and the world champ Ohio team. We can also report that beyond their moves, all other moves were made for the entire league to comport to the 40202. All the off-season transactions have been completed, and now we just have time to put the data together to get the draft boards arranged for everybody and then begin drafting. So it was a really great process this year. Not hurried, took some time with it. Normally the fall league's a little more hurried than the summer league, which I put more attention into. It just worked out that I guess I'm more familiar with the 1980s players and the transactions. They're a little bit more familiar from when me growing up as a kid versus the early 1970s, so I knew a lot of the stuff. So that helped a lot. So let's take a look at the next team, which is the Yankees. We'll go through all this and then the transactions beyond. Okay, I want to show you the Yankees, the starting, probably do this with starting and ending points. The Yankees, we just thought that they were a trading, buying, purchasing kind of ball club and that they were going to make the big splash, move Reggie Jackson, move Tommy John. We had so many trade opportunities. My head was spinning with Reggie. Reggie to the Angels, Reggie to the Oakland A's where he played. Reggie traded for Dave Winfield to straight up. As it turns out, with the Yankees, they're holding on to him. And I think he just might finish there or at least play at least one more year and then either go to the Angels next year or go get a trade for Dave Winfield next year. But right now, the Yankees are going to cash in 1 year out of the 82 card. And that's really the last good year for Reggie. Then he's not very good after that. So the Yankees are going to hold on to that hope one more year. They're also holding on to Tommy John. And they added Easler and Randolph. So basically, the 2 deals for Easler Randolph, that's a lot. That's all they did. And we reported those, so there's no new transactions on the carousel for the Yankees. We have, the next team is Cleveland. We'll just keep going down with begin and ending. Cleveland had 4 guys on waivers, and when the dust cleared, they looked around and look. Joe Charbonneau really fell off after his rookie year, and Larry Harlow does as well. Nobody wanted them. They go straight to the retirement list, which is growing. So that's all Cleveland could do. They didn't make any trades or any movement. So we're briskly moving along before this starts to bog down a little bit. Who's up next? Portland. Let's see if they did anything. They may have, they may have paused as well. They made the big deal for unloading Willie Hernandez to the Tigers, reaping a lot of money in return to be used in the draft. There's Willie Hernandez. And beyond that, they didn't do anything else. They started at 50201, and they stayed there, 40202 for Portland. By getting Pat Underwood to go to the retirement list from the Tigers. So they stayed pat. Which brings us to something pretty interesting. I think it's Cincinnati next. Cincinnati's next. And you're going to see something pretty interesting here, folks. Cincinnati was burning up the phone and a cross-down call with the Ohio players. And this, folks, was on and off and on and off and on and off. And then finally, the world champ Ohio players said, nope, not doing it. So this is the first time I went through the collective process of the organization of a deal. You remember the Yankee thing with Reggie. I don't even have a recording of it. But this was about to happen, and Ohio at the last moment said, we ain't doing it. And it had to do with roster composition. But look at the guts of this trade initially. The Reds would have traded a free agent, Ken Griffey, who goes to the Yankees in 82. He's with the Reds in 81. An active player, Lee May, who they brought back to Cincinnati. A player they're putting on waivers, Bump Wills, was going to the Ohio Players for Dan Driesen, who is their property they wanted back. An extra outfielder, Tito Landrum, and Vida Blue. Vida Blue to the Reds. That was the allure for the Cincinnati Reds, getting Vida Blue to replace Randy Jones in their rotation. That's the Reds, I'll tell you. Small market team, but they had very ambitious plans in my recreation. I always had them making big splashes. It didn't happen, folks. It was vetoed. So did any other moves happen with the Reds? Well, yeah. In a bit of reverse irony here, where you see a lot of the keepers moving onto the waivered list, the Reds took another glance at Bump Wills, who they were going to put on waivers, and say, you know, he's got a pretty decent year in 1982. His defense isn't there, but he's got plenty of power. The only other infielders we have on contract right now are Dave Concepcion and Dave McKay. He wasn't even with the Reds. So that's the move they made. So this didn't happen, put a big X through it. But the Reds' consolation was keeping a second baseman on their team, Bump Wills, in the last year of his career. And I don't think there's any more for the Reds after that, no. Pretty cool situation. Now we have Oakland, and now we're going to start to see the end of the draft culminating without a lot of bang. Oakland realizes that, much like a lot of teams, nobody wants Wayne Gross, so they put him on waivers. Houston, not only does nobody want Harry Spillman, he's not even going on waivers, he's going straight to retirement. So he could come out of retirement, but that's the list he'll be on. The Ohio Players, Rodney Scott is only a .205 hitter, has a little bit of defense, a little bit of speed, but frankly, a lot of guys possess that on waivers, which is where Rodney Scott ends up. And does that conclude? Yeah, that concluded the first round through the draft order. Okay, we got through 32. So then we go back up top to fix any problems from the top of the draft back down. And these are the transactions that occurred after that. Seattle, Ross Baumgarten started with the White Sox, was traded to Seattle. Then he was put on waivers by Seattle. Then he was traded for a retired player, Bill Naharodny, so that the Seattle and the Dodgers can have the correct accounting. The Dodgers moved Bobby Castillo, who nobody wanted, directly to retirement. Bobby Castillo can come out of retirement with the Twins. He has one good year with the Twins, pitching on 3 days rest. Side note, Bobby Castillo threw a no-hitter in one of my mixed card leagues like 20 years ago. He was the first pitcher, this is embarrassing, he was the first pitcher to throw a no-hitter in Strat-O-Matic for me. He probably took 10,000 games to get one. Not kidding, folks. It's almost impossible to get a no-hitter in Strat-O-Matic. Minnesota, they're now seeing these are mostly accounting moves. Minnesota moves a waivered player to retirement, Rafael Landeskog. The Mets did it twice. Jose Morales and Willie Montanez from waivers to retirement. Again, the retirement needs players and keepers, and waivers need to go there. Basically, this column needs to start turning red more frequently. Florida, poor David Palmer. Didn't have a good day. Way up here. He was dangled in a trade as a keeper. Where is old David Palmer up here? Somewhere. Right up, yeah. And then, unfortunately, Florida had to put him on waivers. Well, now, unfortunately, he isn't even going to get waivers. He's gone directly to retirement. Baltimore used Tom Brookins last year as utility player. He's going on retirement. Tigers didn't want him. Tigers are saying, we'll just pull him out of retirement if we need him. Padres, adios to Jeff Newman. These guys just aren't good enough anymore. Stan Pappy played short for the White Sox last year, not this year. He goes to retirement. Rick Waits throws the baseball with his left arm. That's why he was been in the league. He goes to retirement. Though, Waits actually has a pretty decent job in the bullpen by the mid-'80s. Slightly out of our timeline. He could come out of retirement. We have a trade. So Arizona was a team that possessed the extra lefty, a fourth one. So they sent Ed Vandenberg back to Seattle, who had cut or traded Ross Baumgarten to give them their third lefty and taken a righty. So Vandenberg and Armstrong are both players from the same year. When you get a green-green trade, you got to match the years. So both players are from '82. Arizona goes from 4 lefties to 3 lefties, and Seattle goes from 2 lefties to 3 lefties. Arizona had to move a waivered player to retirement and an active player or a keeper player to waivers. They didn't want to put Spire on the retired list because he's an everyday player. Dillard is not. Dillard's more of a utility player. Dillard hits like 218. Spire hits 257. We could have flipped that, but we figured that Spire has more value in the league. Players on waivers get seen more than players on the retired list. Another trade. So Seattle acquired Ed Vandenberg to be their lefty in the bullpen. So they were able to part with the previous lefty in the bullpen, Brian Clark, sent him to the Ohio players for Jackson Todd, because Ohio last year only played with 2 lefties on their team, Vida Blue and Grant Jackson, and it looks like Grant Jackson's career is going to come to an end soon. So that helps both teams get the proper number of lefties. Kansas City said goodbye to "You're a Rich Gale and you've gone too far and you know it don't matter anyway." Rich Gale sadly goes from waivers to retirement. The Angels had Sadik for a year, no more. The Giants, they brought Bobby Bonds back with his 1980 card. Funny part, the 81 card looks almost exactly like the 1980 card, but not good enough. He's on retirement. Some team might bring him back just for name recognition. I think he's an ace stealer. That's possibly worth picking up, and his defense isn't too bad. I think he hits 203. The Reds' experiment with Randy Jones did not work out like they thought. As you saw above, they were not able to acquire Vida Blue either. They have to think about what they're going to do with the lefty part of their rotation. They might have to just stick with Joe Price as a starter instead of a reliever. Just didn't work out for the Cincinnati Reds. Oakland, you saw Enrique Romo way up here get into several trades. He's in this trade. I think he was in a trade up here. There he is. Yeah, he started with Seattle, then he got traded, then he got traded again, and then Enrique Romo finally down here. It's like, you're not even good enough to be on waivers. We're going to put you in retirement. All right, Houston was the team that had the most valuable player still unclaimed and not a place to keep him. Dave Collins. This is a really good baseball player statistically. Let's go take a look. We're going to take a look at Dave Collins because he's got a really nice 84. Always had a good stick base stealing ability. Look at the averages from 79 on. 318, 303, 270, 71, 308. With Toronto, his WAR is 3.1 if you look at that. But he's a 308 hitter, 811 OPS. Stole 60 bases as a double-A stealer with the Blue Jays in 1984. So, unfortunately, Houston had an embarrassment of riches, and so they had to make a deal. And indeed, they did deal him to the Toronto Blue Jays. Pretty happy about that. Toronto generally gets a raw deal because by the time the Blue Jays actually get a really good baseball team, I'm pretty much not in the baseball business in the mid-1980s. Toronto wins the American League East in 1985, and I pretty much stopped playing the timeline there for whatever reason. So they're going to have Dave Collins. That'll help Toronto. The principles were that Alfredo Griffin is the matchup player traded, and Houston needed to put a guy on waivers, and it was Alfredo Griffin. If you're wondering why Toronto's getting rid of Alfredo Griffin, it is to make room for Tony Fernandez in Toronto. The active players are Rob Piccolo and Leon Roberts. So that makes Houston accounting. We'll look at Houston, Toronto. We'll do it now here. Might as well. Let's go to Houston. And you're wondering, well, who are they keeping? Cesar Cedeno, Danny Walling, Don Sutton, Joe Sambito. No room for Dave Collins, as you could tell. And the Toronto Blue Jays, Rance Mullinex, Dave Collins. Dave Stieb, Jim Clancy. That's sexy. Liking the Blue Jays here. That's nice cast. Bring him back. All right. Houston then made a deal with the Phillies for accounting purposes, trading a couple second basemen. One's retired, one's almost retired on waivers. That just balances the books for both teams. No tokens involved. Oh, forgot to mention. Because Dave Collins is so valuable, Houston had to fork a draft token to Toronto. Almost forgot that. So we have to look over here into this column over here. Toronto got a draft token when they moved Carew, lost it when they went after Dave Collins. Houston lost a draft token when they went after Don Sutton, then got the draft token back in moving on from Dave Collins. So they're both teams remain at exactly 5 tokens. It's good to see a lot of teams with a plus and a minus. That puts them right where they need to be. Again, we still have a few teams that have spent a lot of money without recouping any of it. Here we have Detroit at just $2. We got the White Sox at just $3. And they just are going to play the draft poor without any money. All right. Any more transactions? This is the final one. So Grant Jackson was on the keeper list. Looking at it closely, he didn't look good. He only has 1 year left. They made the trade for Brian Clark up here a little bit. This guy, he's left-handed. So they could afford to move Grant Jackson from the keeper list to the waiver list. And the waivered player they need to move to the retired list is Victor Cruz. And when that transaction is done, that means that that's the last transaction. So now we can look at the draft order here, and you see right here the 40202s. They're all complete. We're at 128.64.64. We have the draft tokens accountability here. Pluses and minuses everywhere. When you add it up, 160 is 32 times 5. And this is just where we put tokens. This column length could be a varying length. I just picked 4. That's enough room. And then we add it up again here, 160. So that accountability is there. When we go to the rosters here, everybody is a 402 there. If I were to do this really quickly, and you were to look at this column right there, I'm going to page down. See that? 402 and 2 everywhere. By the way, this other factor here, this number that says 41620, if you take 10,000, multiply it by 80 for the year 1980, you get 10,080. If you take 100 times 80, excuse me, add it, not multiply it, add it. If you take 10,000, add 80 to it, you get 10,080. 100 plus 80, or the waivered guys are just at 80, okay? And the the $1 players are at 80 as well. So it only adds the 10,000 for the keepers to get this number 41,620. The reason that is significant is that it's the same number, 41,620. And you can do the same thing as you page down for reconciliation purposes, just to make sure every team has 6 players from 1981, 4 players from 82, and 2 players from 1983. To make sure that math works, you scroll all the way down and that number is constant. So that means we have a reconciliation of all the teams going into the draft. Now, some teams will have, let's take a look at Boston for a second. In the case of Boston, they actually have records for 10 pitchers and 10 hitters. We have Larry Bradford, a pitcher, listed up here in the offense, and we also have Stan Bonson. It doesn't matter because this is going to be their pitching staff. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6 active players: Eckersley, Ojeda, O'Connor, Tiant, Stanley, and Campbell from the years of 81 and 82. And then these 2 players, John Tudor and Mark Clear, are the players they're going to draft. So they become pitchers 7 and 8. This record for Bradford is dead wood, as is this record for Stan Bonson. So when you look at the active hitters for Boston, Boggs, Evans, Harper, Oster, Rice, and Wagner, it's 6. And they're going to be adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 hitters in these spots. Armas, Yastrzemski, and then 4 other hitters replacing the waivered players who put in there. So that's how you can actually you could store waived and retired players. Pitchers can go in the hitting spots. Pitchers can go in the hitting spots. We just know that when we draft, we're going to flip the pitching spot back to a hitter and the hitting spot back to a pitcher. That's something that happens during the draft. But for record keeping, it's fine to put them where they are presently. That makes all the accounting perfect. So the next step, form of the draft, is simply to organize each individual year's draft box: 81, 82, 83, and 84. Put the carry-on guys in the right spots, the dozen players everybody's carrying on with. This was those guys a year ago, denoted in green. That's your 12. We just created 4 players per team as keepers. That gets you to 16. Each team puts 2 guys on waivers. That gets you to 18. And each team puts 2 guys on retirement. That gets you to 20. That's the next step. And then we can begin putting that data together and then doing the draft. I guess the next video is, I'll just show you the draft, that organization. I'll show you how I can get this data done quickly, and then we'll just put this thing on hiatus until we give you draft results in the fall. So that's been a pretty cool deep dive to how I organize one league into the next, kind of bringing Major League Baseball history forward as best as I can, keeping the league as competitive as best as I can. Thanks for checking this out, folks. We'll see you next time.